In the land of Tamriel, we get to play as many different protagonists or doom-driven heroes. Those who have saved the land from a great many threats, from slaying bandits that rob the innocent to defeating gods that plan to invade and conquer all of existence. But of these protagonists we can play as, from the Eternal Champion to the last Dragonborn and all others in between, you might wonder which of them would likely be the strongest, the toughest, and the most powerful out of all the rest. Well, allow me to answer that very question in this very video. Hello my fellow Hirelings of House Telvanni! I'm Neloth, and today we are going to be discussing which Elder Scrolls protagonist is indeed the most powerful. Before we begin, there are technically 17 playable protagonists in the Elder Scrolls series, many of whom aren't really noteworthy or powerful enough to even talk about. Like the Master Tunnel Rat. Yes, that's the real title of the playable character from the obscure Elder Scrolls Travels, Stormhold. But instead, I will be talking about the protagonists from the Elder Scrolls 1 all the way to 5 and the Vestige from the Elder Scrolls Online. Also, we are, for the most part, going to be discussing these characters from a lore perspective rather than a gameplay perspective. So the fact that you can technically craft nuke spells in Morrowind or Oblivion, or turning a wooden sword into a god-killing relic that defies the laws of the universe in Skyrim will be irrelevant in this video. So with all that being said, let us dive right in. Collecting into last place is the Eternal Champion from the first Elder Scrolls game, Arena. The Eternal Champion is the hero who spent a decade crusading across Tamriel searching for pieces of the Staff of Chaos, a very powerful staff which the champion used to destroy the battle mage Yeagar Tharn, who had banished the Emperor Uriel Septim into oblivion and took on his appearance, and had more or less ran the entire empire into the ground due to neglect and mismanagement in what is referred to as the Imperial Simulacrum. Now, the reason why the Eternal Champion is the weakest here is because their accomplishments pale in comparison to the other protagonists. Aside from defeating Yeagar Tharn, the champion doesn't really do anything else of note aside from slaying a couple of liches, and claiming various artifacts for themselves like the Ebony Mail or Skeleton Key. But most of the other protagonists also accomplish these things as well. What's worse is that, unlike all the other protagonists who can accomplish all their ultimate quests and deeds in a matter of weeks or maybe even months, it takes the Eternal Champion 10 fucking years to gather everything, all while the Empire was slowly decaying under Tharn. Simply put, the Eternal Champion is definitely the weakest compared to all the rest in this video, and it's not even close. But while weaker, they are still deserving of respect in my opinion, because if the Eternal Champion never saved the real Emperor, the antagonists in the games of Morrowind and Oblivion may have succeeded in their goals, and the land of Tamriel would likely have become a wasteland. Warping into 5th place is the Agent, the protagonist in the Elder Scrolls 2 Daggerfall. The Agent was a member of the Blades who had been sent by Emperor Uriel Septim to exorcise the spirit of King Lysandus of Daggerfall and avenge his death, and also to retrieve a letter of a sensitive nature sent by the Emperor to the widow of Lysandus named Minisera, a letter which speaks of the Numidium and the Totem of Tiber Septim. The Numidium being a massive, colossal, dwarven automaton of immeasurable godlike powers, and the Totem of Tiber Septim being the artifact that allowed Tiber Septim, the man who would become the god Talos, to control this Numidium, which aided him in conquering all of Tamriel. The Agent would then give the totem to one of 7 different people in a sort of bidding war, and after retrieving another artifact to power the Numidium called the Mantella from Aetherius, or Heaven, the fate of the provinces High Rock and Hammerfell are forever changed. Though while the Agent hands the Numidium to one of 7 different people, these bidders all technically acquire it when time fractured and broke in an event known as the Warp in the West. Now, while the agent doesn't have some final boss to fight at the end of their story like the Eternal Champion does, they still accomplish a lot more deeds and kill a lot more powerful enemies. For example, in Arena, the most powerful enemy aside from Yeagar Tharn is a Lich, and in Daggerfall there exists Archliches and Daedra Lords. So already the agent has defeated more powerful enemies. On top of that, there are far more side quests the agent can partake in and can join various factions and rise through their ranks, including the Fighters Guild, Dark Brotherhood, and also one of 8 different temples and one of 10 different knightly orders. The agent can also complete Daedric quests for the 16 Daedric princes, earning their favor and being awarded with a Daedric artifact. And while the Eternal Champion can find a few Daedric artifacts, they don't come by as many as the agent potentially can, or even meet any of the Daedric princes in the first place. Additionally, unlike in Arena, the agent can potentially become a vampire and join a vampiric clan, or become a lycanthrope, either a werewolf or a boar, giving the agent an edge over the Eternal Champion when it comes to raw power and abilities. Now, while more powerful than the Eternal Champion, the agent still isn't nearly as powerful as the rest of the protagonists, especially the next one I will discuss. Mostly because the Eternal Champion and agent are just ordinary mortals, while everyone else becomes something more. Resurrecting into 4th place is the Vestige, the protagonist in the Elder Scrolls Online. Now, the Vestige is without a doubt the most storied protagonist on this list, due to the fact that the Elder Scrolls Online is an MMO that has been around since 2014, and so new content has been added every single year since then. Because of this, the Vestige has accomplished far more deeds than anyone else in this video and has been to every single province on Tamriel and then some. The Vestige has defeated and thwarted an incredible amount of villains, far too many to list here, but I'll give you some of the highlights. The Vestige defeated Mannimarco, the Worm King, and greatest necromancer alive. They defeated Molag Bal, Daedric Prince of Domination, and a god in one-on-one combat, though they did temporarily absorb a powerful artifact called the Amulet of Kings in order to even stand a chance in the first place. They fought in the Three Banners War and briefly became emperor until being usurped by other warlords. They saved each of the living gods of the Tribunal and thwarted the Daedric princes Clavicus Vile and Nocturnal. They formed the Dragon Guard and stopped an army of dragons, including one named Calgrantid who attempted to ascend to godhood. They stopped an army of vampires and werewolves called the Grey Host from destroying Tamriel, and even killed their leader Rada al-Saran, an ancient vampiric Yokudan sword saint that dueled the Yokudan god named Aleki to a standstill. The Vestige also thwarted many more kings, queens, and Daedra, but let's be honest, I could be here all night recanting their deeds. The Vestige is also technically immortal and cannot die, at least until the threats of Tamriel during the events of ESO come to a close. See, the Vestige is a soul-shriven, mortals who had their very souls ripped from them by the followers of Molag Bal, and their bodies or husks were banished to Cold Harbor, the realm of the Daedric Prince, to be tormented forever. However, with the help of Emperor Varen Aquilarius, the Vestige was able to absorb the power from a fragment of Aetherius called a Sky Shard, and so they basically become the Aedric version of the Daedra, since when they die, their body simply reforms, just like the Vestige, which is a crazy powerful ability to possess. Now, I have been going on and on about the Vestige, their numerous deeds they have performed, and the fact that they are basically immortal. I mean, the Vestige literally beat the ever-living shit out of and dominated the Prince of Domination. So you might be wondering, why in the ever-living fuck isn't the Vestige in first place? Well, there are a few answers for this. The first is that while the Vestige is immortal and simply reforms their body or regenerates after death, this ability is temporary. Because when the existential threats of Tamriel and beyond come to a close, basically when the events of ESO are done, this immortal power will go away. It's complicated to explain how, and also explain the nature of the Vestige's soul in general, but the book Chaotic Creatia, the Azure Plasm suggests this. Additionally, godly beings like Hermaeus Mora, Prince of Fate, and Almalexia, who is still at the height of her power, both allude to the Vestige one day dying like all mortals do, likely from old age or something, proving they aren't forever immortal like some others. The second reason why the Vestige is in 4th place is because even though they have defeated and thwarted dragons and gods, they needed help to do so. The Vestige would never have been able to give Molag Bal a good ol' spanking without briefly absorbing the Amulet of Kings with the help of Abner Tharn and a willing sacrifice. They also could not have easily defeated many dragons without the help of dragon horns that can blast dragons from the sky and allies to help distract and stun them, including another dragon named Nafalar. I mean, there is one protagonist we'll talk about who canonically can easily solo a dragon and is literally built to do so. The Vestige, sadly, is not. And every other protagonist has soloed and defeated various gods or godlike beings, with nothing but their own skills and permanent powers. Understand, this video is discussing which Elder Scrolls protagonist is the most powerful, not the most storied, and not the most temporarily powerful. One final reason is that unlike the other protagonists who are able to acquire, and more importantly keep, powerful artifacts like Mehrunes Razor or Dawnbreaker, the Vestige never gets to claim artifacts like them, and at best only uses them for a short period of time before they are wrenched away from them. The closest the Vestige can get is acquiring copies and replicas of these artifacts, but possess none of the power. To that end, that is why the Vestige is in 4th place. Reincarnating into 3rd place is the Nerevarine, the protagonist in the Elder Scrolls III: Morrowind. The Nerevarine is the prophesized reincarnation of the ancient warlord known as Indoril Nerevar, and is prophesied to defeat Dagoth and restore Morrowind to greatness. And the Nerevarine does technically succeed in accomplishing both of those things. Now, Dagoth is the main antagonist in Morrowind, who is going around spreading a disease known as the Blight, which turns people into immortal, mindless, deformed thralls. He is able to spread this blight using the heart of Lorkhan, which is the heart that once belonged to Lorkhan himself, the god that tricked or convinced the Aedra to create Tamriel at the cost of much of their power. Dagoth also absorbed much of the power from the heart, being bestowed immortality and godly powers, effectively becoming a god himself.
I'm a god. How can you kill a god? What a grand and intoxicating innocence.
And the Nerevarine was able to best Dagoth in battle and destroy or banish the heart of Lorkhan, killing Dagoth, meaning the Nerevarine has actually killed a literal god, not defeated or thwarted like the Vestige has, literally killed. Not only that, but Dagoth has 7 brothers that look very similar to him, and dozens of servants affected with the Blight, and all are incredibly powerful. Not as powerful as Dagoth himself, mind you, but the Nerevarine can potentially kill them all, slaughtering the incredibly powerful House Dagoth single-handedly, which is an incredible feat on top of destroying the Devil Dagoth himself. Additionally, there is the Tribunal. Almalexia, Sothasil, and Vivec, who originally possessed the heart of Lorkhan and set themselves up as gods before Daddy Dagoth came a-knockin'. Now, to be fair, the Tribunal during the events of Morrowind are very diminished in their power, and their divinity is slowly fading. We can even see this with Vivec, who can't even stay floating long without having to come back to the ground to take a breather, unlike in ESO, where Vivec stays in the air. However, while diminished, the Tribunal gods are still extremely powerful and formidable, especially since in-game the souls of Vivec and Almalexia are classified as divine, so you could still say that they are gods or at the very least demigods. But I think it's more fun and cooler to imagine the Tribunal are still technically considered gods. Now, the Nerevarine has canonically slain Almalexia, who went mad at the prospect of losing her divinity and killed Cyrodiil, and attempted to kill the Nerevarine and planned to kill Vivec after in order to set herself up as the one true god. However, she failed, and now the Nerevarine is a god slayer twice over. Now, the Nerevarine has the option of slaying Vivec as well, though they do not have to, since he will lose his divinity and leave the realm of Mundus regardless. But if the Nerevarine does kill Vivec, who is albeit slightly weaker than Almalexia, as Almalexia's soul is larger than Vivec's, then the Nerevarine is a god slayer thrice over now. But wait, there's more, because the Nerevarine can journey to Solstheim and partake in the Great Hunt, a hunting game ran by the Daedric prince Hirelings, where the Nerevarine fights many powerful werewolves that make Skyrim's werewolves look like puppies, including Tharstan Heartfang, who has lived as a powerful werewolf for centuries. Karstag, an extremely powerful frost giant, was also slain by the Nerevarine during the Great Hunt, and if you faced him in Skyrim, you'd know that's an accomplishment. And last but certainly not least, the Nerevarine defeated one of 3 aspects of Hirelings himself. So once again, the Nerevarine beat a god, but obviously not slaying him this time, since Hirelings is, well, a Daedra. There are also other incredibly powerful entities that the Nerevarine has defeated too, like the Imperfect from the Clockwork City, but you get the idea. Beyond being a god slayer, the Nerevarine is also immortal as well, since the Nerevarine was infected by Dagoth Gairs with the Blight. But thanks to the assistance of almighty Divaith Fjör, the Nerevarine was able to get rid of the negative effects of the Blight and only keep the good ones, which includes never aging, basically immortality, something only one other protagonist can claim to not do either. Also, while not as important, the Nerevarine has the potential to join and also become the leader of more factions than any other protagonist, including the Fighters, Mage, and Thieves Guild, the Morag Tong Assassins, the Imperial Legion and Imperial Cult, the Tribunal Temple, and one of the Great Houses of Morrowind, as well as some other minor factions too. The Nerevarine has also collected extremely powerful artifacts of Adric, Daedric, and other origins, which only helps to further increase their power. Now, all that's to say that the Nerevarine is exceptionally powerful and has defeated gods and other legendary creatures to prove their power. The Nerevarine has claimed vast titles and vast artifacts as well, but they lack raw offensive power, which makes the next protagonist only slightly stronger than the Nerevarine. Shouting into second place is the last Dragonborn, the protagonist in the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. The last Dragonborn is the prophesized dragon slayer whose destiny is to destroy Alduin the World Eater. Alduin being a powerful dragon who is either the firstborn son of Akatosh or a corrupted version of Akatosh himself, since in the ancient Nordic pantheon, Alduin is the Nordic interpretation of Akatosh. Now, unfortunately, compared to the Nerevarine and even the Vestige, the deeds of the last Dragonborn aren't as crazy. Yes, the last Dragonborn does defeat Alduin in Sovngarde, the afterlife of the Nords, which is a big fucking deal, especially since if you're like me and believe Alduin is indeed Akatosh, then the Dragonborn defeated the god of gods himself, the chief of the 9 divines. But notice how I said defeat, because the last Dragonborn never actually killed Alduin and absorbed his soul. Rather, Alduin's soul went up into the skies of Sovngarde. There are multiple theories as to what happened, but that can be saved for a future video. Also, the Dragonborn did not defeat Alduin alone, but had help from 3 ancient heroes of Sovngarde that used an Elder Scroll to banish Alduin long ago. though. The Dragonborn did kill other powerful beings like Lord Harkon, a powerful ancient vampire who planned to permanently block out the sun, and throw Tamriel into an endless night so that vampires could freely dominate Tamriel without fearing the tyranny of the sun. Though the last Dragonborn did have help from Ariel's bow and Harkon's daughter, Serana. The Dragonborn also defeated another powerful Dragonborn named Miraak, who was actually the first Dragonborn ever and was once a dragon priest, but defied his dragon overlords and devoted himself to Hermaeus Mora instead, so he could learn his secrets and one day break free from Apocrypha, the realm of Mora, and invade Tamriel. Though while the last Dragonborn did best Miraak, they did not strike the killing blow, as Hermaeus Mora was the one to kill Miraak when he realized the last Dragonborn was going to win the fight. Now, while the Dragonborn is technically 1 for 2 when it comes to actually killing their antagonists, they have slain numerous more powerful creatures than any other protagonist on this list because of, well, all the dragons flying around. And since dragons are immortal Aedric beings and sons of Akatosh and can only be permanently slain by the Dragonborn, they are all demigods and in a few cases, literal gods. So the last Dragonborn has technically killed more gods than any other protagonist, though I feel Demigod Slayer is more appropriate. Remember, the Vestige is not Dragonborn, so all the dragons they slaughtered, with help, were not permanently killed, just down for the count a while. The Dragonborn has also killed extremely powerful foes like the Ebony Warrior, whose power rivals that of the Dragonborn himself, and the Ghost of Karstag, who the Nerevarine also slayed, showing that the last Dragonborn is at least on par with the Nerevarine. Now, I haven't talked about the last Dragonborn in the best light, especially compared to the Nerevarine, who I was basically fawning over, let's be real. So why in Molag Bal's testicles is the last Dragonborn more powerful than the Nerevarine? Well, the answer is simple. The Thu'um, the voice, the shouts that the Dragonborn wields against their enemies. The Thu'um is extremely powerful ancient magic and also language of the dragons that can basically alter reality to suit the whims of the user based on the words spoken. The ability to summon storms, slow time, force dragons to land on the ground, and even dominate the will of dragons to serve the user. The Bend Will shout especially makes the Dragonborn more powerful because dominating the will of fucking demigods is a crazy divine power to have. The last Dragonborn also absorbs the souls of dragons they slay, which is the only way for a dragon to permanently be killed. Suck on that, Vestige. And when the Dragonborn absorbs the souls of dragons, they gain a piece of their life force and knowledge. And since dragons are plentiful in Skyrim and very long-lived and powerful, that's a lot of potential Boethia Dam knowledge and life force. Additionally, the last Dragonborn is basically a demigod as well, since dragons are demigods and the protagonist is part dragon, and chosen by Akatosh or Kinnereth personally. While the Nerevarine is more accomplished in my opinion and my personal favorite, the last Dragonborn has stronger inborn gifts and abilities that can even dominate those of a divine nature. So if that's the case, who the hell is stronger than the last Dragonborn? Well, allow me to introduce to you the champion of Cyrodiil, also known as the Hero of Kvatch, is the protagonist in The Elder Scrolls IV: Oblivion. Now, unlike the previous 3 protagonists who had immortality and other special powers on their side, the champion of Cyrodiil starts out simply as just a mortal man. So how in Oblivion is this champion stronger than the Nerevarine or Dragonborn? Well, it is because while being handicapped as just a normie, they were able to still stand up against demigods and actual gods, and eventually become something stronger than any other protagonist in this video. The champion was instrumental in fighting back against the Daedric armies of Mehrunes Dagon and the Mythic Dawn cult in an apocalyptic event known as the Oblivion Crisis. They managed to slay untold hordes of Daedric creatures, including Daedroth and Zivali, and closed countless Daedric portals. and only the Vestige can rival the champion's Daedric kill count. They also managed to kill Mankar Cameron, a very powerful mage and cultist devoted to Mehrunes Dagon and orchestrated the whole Oblivion Crisis, and also was very likely Dragonborn either by birth or design, since when encountered he is wearing the Amulet of Kings, something only a Dragonborn can wear. Unfortunately, the champion did not get to directly defeat Mehrunes Dagon himself, as that honor was given to Martin Septim, who sacrificed himself and turned into the avatar of Akatosh using the Amulet of Kings and kicked Mehrunes Dagon right in the goddamn balls. Now, while all this is well and good, it is the feats afterward that really showcase the champion's power. Eventually, the champion becomes the Divine Crusader, the chosen successor of the Star-Made Knight known as Pelinal Whitestrake. The champion might even be stronger than Pelinal because after collecting all the Crusader relics that Pelinal had, the champion acquired something that Pelinal could never possess, the Blessing of Talos, because Talos didn't exist when Pelinal was around. And after, the champion of Cyrodiil, who had become Pelinal reborn, was able to slay Umaril the Unfeathered alone, something Pelinal Whitestrake failed to do. And Umaril was an extremely powerful Ayleid demigod whose father was a god from a previous Kalpa, or previous world. So if you know the story of Pelinal Whitestrake and how incredibly powerful he was, being a demigod himself, who conquered countless kingdoms and ruled them only to later abandon them and also massacred armies of Ayleids, then you know that slaying Umaril is an exceptional achievement that shows how powerful the champion of Cyrodiil truly is. Not only that, but it is theorized that Pelinal Whitestrake is the Shezarine, the reincarnation of Shazar, which is the imperial name for Lorcan. If true, that further cements Pelinal as a demigod or just a straight-up god, but also could make the champion a demigod as well, since the champion in a sense becomes Pelinal after collecting and wearing the relics of the Crusader, following in Pelinal Whitestrake's footsteps. But wait, there is one more essential accomplishment made by the champion of Cyrodiil that cements their place without question in first place. See, the champion also travels to the Shivering Isles, the Daedric realm of the Prince of Madness, Sheogorath, and helps Sheogorath stop a threat known as the Grey March, an event where Sheogorath will turn into Jiggalag, the Daedric Prince of Order, and destroy and rebuild the Shivering Isles into a land of order, but only to then revert back into Sheogorath and destroy all that is orderly and return everything back to chaos and insanity once again. The champion helps Sheogorath stop this cycle by basically becoming and mantling the Mad God himself. Talk about insanity, am I right? And after slowly assuming the titles, powers, and relics of Sheogorath, the champion of Cyrodiil will then witness the previous Sheogorath turn into Jiggalag. And afterwards, the champion defeats Jiggalag in a legendary battle, defeating the most powerful Daedric prince. As the reason Jiggalag becomes Sheogorath is because all the other Daedric princes feared Jiggalag's power and cursed him with madness. So let me reiterate. The champion of Cyrodiil becomes a literal god and afterwards defeats the most powerful Daedric prince, and possibly the most powerful god in the Elder Scrolls. Additionally, Jiggalag and Sheogorath are now forever separated and no longer the same entity. The Sheogorath we know is now forever Jiggalag, while the champion of Cyrodiil is now forever Sheogorath. This solidifies without a shadow of a doubt that the champion of Cyrodiil is the most powerful protagonist in the entire Elder Scrolls series. And anyone who says otherwise likely does not know what they are talking about, or probably has only ever played Skyrim. Understand, we are talking about who is the most powerful protagonist in general. And you might say that the champion of Cyrodiil becoming the mad god Sheogorath does not count, since after a few decades and centuries, they lost the entirety of their original personality and identity, and all that is left is Sheogorath. But when you meet Sheogorath in Skyrim, he makes several references to the events of Oblivion, events that the champion was a part of, and also states that Martin's septum was the best septum to ever live, almost as if Sheogorath has a sort of bias. A bias that can only be held by someone who personally knew Martin.
You are the best septum that's ever ruled. Well, except for that Martin fella. But he turned into a dragon god, and that's hardly sporting. You know, I was there for that whole sordid affair. Marvelous time! Butterflies, blood, a fox, a severed head, ho ho ho, and the cheese! To die for.
When you spend more of your life as the mad god Sheogorath than you do as your normal self, it makes sense that you would slowly grow into Sheogorath, as many people state in the Shivering Isles DLC. And besides, it's just more fun to imagine the champion of Cyrodiil has now officially become a god. Just like how it's more fun to believe Alduin is a corrupted version of Akatosh rather than just being the firstborn son of Akatosh. But understand that none of the protagonists start out all-powerful at the beginning of their journey. The last Dragonborn does not already know every single shout and power. They learned them over time. The Nerevarine is not a god-slaying immortal being immediately after stepping off the boat, only becoming so after many trials and tribulations. The same goes for the champion of Cyrodiil, which is why they are, and likely forever will be, the most powerful protagonist in the Elder Scrolls series. And that's all I wrote, a video where I talk about the power of every single mainline Elder Scrolls protagonist, and explain why the champion of Cyrodiil is definitely the most powerful. Being a god truly has its perks, doesn't it? Obviously, this is a subjective take, as there will never be a way to truly know for sure. And I'm sure many Sky Babies have their reasons for why the Dragonborn is actually the most powerful. But hopefully this video and my reasons either confirmed or changed your opinions. If not, feel free to comment who you think is the most powerful protagonist down below. But you know who I think the most powerful people watching this video are? My channel members, and they are... Mirak, The Proud Prince, Milani Stilla, Carson Friday, Dalton Rupert, Cosmo, Jorinish Evento, Serene Molly, Doc Smoothie, Shinigami James, Gretums, Winter Raven, Vivid Void, Argentis, Metal Health, Blancfall, Henry O'Dim, Sovdark, Gillernt, Grud, Luxie, Abdullah the Goat, Caden, Kirill Gaming, Flexi, Grabowski, Bane Hellborn, Katie Harper, The Ember Raven, Jorinaris Targaryen, Awea Ann, Elia J, Drink Tea With Me, Tonic, 24 Seconds, Enclave Personnel, Foodening, Pillsbury Drew Boy, Dustbite Opossum, Saver, Bunny Girl Gamer, Lavender Loves Underground, Layla Spellwind, and Hellacious Hustler. So with all that being said, make sure to like the like button, like the subscribe button, and like the bell notification down below to be updated on future videos. And I will see you whenever the fuck I decide to upload again. House Telvanni be with you.
Please, O hero of Skyrim, I shall be ever so grateful.